I'm in absolute awe right now. I'm in total awe. I hope this isn't going to be lost on anyone. I have been going through a very difficult time. You guys know what I'm going through right now. My home's been auctioned. I'm standing in faith in what God is going to do, but the thing that brings me hope, that brings me comfort, is that God keeps talking to me, that he keeps revealing things to me. He's not giving me the play-by-play about anything that's going to happen, especially in my own life. I know it's important for me to be low. I know that I'm blessed to be his servant, but also as his servant, you got to be brought to a really low place, and it's a hard thing to do. But when he reveals stuff like this, when he reveals something to me, it's so incredible that you just feel like, okay, I have enough strength to keep going. So I asked today for strength to keep going. Reveal something to me, talk to me. And when God does that, he's going to do it by his law with 2 witnesses. And one of the questions on my heart has been, what is going to be the role of this new pope, of that kingdom of Babylon the Great, started by Babylon the Great? What's going to be her role? And I started out today in my study, actually, in Revelation 17. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. Okay, so Babylon the Great. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to accomplish this purpose by agreeing to hand over to the beast their royal authority until God's words are fulfilled. The woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth. Okay, so the prostitute, it says the prostitute. It does not say, and I believe that they'll hate her daughters as well, but if you scroll up to verse 5, it says the name written on her forehead was a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. And you see that later on in the chapter, so then it goes on to say, I saw the woman who was drunk with the blood of God's holy people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. And then it says later on in the chapter that they're going to hate her and they're going to burn her with fire. We know that Babylon the Great, the harlot Catholic Church, has something to do with what is going to happen with this image of the Antichrist. We just don't know what. We don't know where it fits in, because we know the image of the Antichrist is actually the persecuting power from Revelation 13. But what happened to Babylon the Great? Where is she? So I want to show you something. Daniel 11, verse 39. He, the image of the Antichrist, counterfeit Israel, he will attack the mightiest fortresses with the help, something is helping him, of a foreign god, and will greatly honor those who acknowledge him. He's receiving help. There's the first witness God gave me. Now let's go to Revelation 9. As you see that this Antichrist is persecuting, starting out with those who do not have the seal of God. So actually starting out with its own kingdom, those who've been worshiping it in counterfeit Christianity. It turns on them. And if you see the rift happening between Trump and Netanyahu, then you should be able to see they're very angry. First of all, so many Israelis in Israel loathe and despise the United States. It doesn't matter that it worships it. They call it its sugar daddy. They feel resentful about the fact that they even have ever had to answer to it. We are the chosen people. You should just give us everything that we need, right? Everything that we want, and go along with our narrative. So it shouldn't be too confusing that this is an easy turn to happen. If you think there's loyalty in Satan's kingdom, you're dumb. Guess again, because there's not. And even less when the BFF that's been providing all of this is now making deals with other Arab nations and is likely going to be withholding from Israel more and more. Counterfeit Israel. I want to show you something. So they go into attack, and you see the attack is being, this army is being described as locusts. And it says the locusts looked like horses prepared for battle. On their heads, they wore something like crowns of gold, so they've been given authority. And their faces resembled human faces. That's because they are. Their hair was like women's hair. Now, when Paul talks about women's hair, he talks about a woman being given hair as a covering, as her covering. That doesn't translate to wear a covering, guys. As her covering. So they have hair like women's hair. They're not hippies. They're wearing coverings. And it shouldn't confuse us what kind of coverings they're wearing, because we already know that the image of the Antichrist is counterfeit Israel, and we know what they wear on their heads. We know who the persecuting power is. So they're wearing coverings, and their teeth are like lion's teeth. We see elsewhere in Scripture that, first of all, you don't have to be a genius to figure out what lion's teeth represent. It's a devouring, but God also says, she roars at me, therefore I hate her. Look at the next sentence. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron. Let's go to Daniel. In Daniel 2, the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream had legs of iron. Its feet were partly of iron and partly of baked clay. The legs of iron represent pagan Rome, and the feet that are partly of iron and partly of baked clay represent papal Rome. Iron is always used to represent Rome. First American Pope. This is the very topic that I wanted to talk about in this video, and God revealed it to me at the very end of the previous video that I was doing. I can't even make that up. I can't make that up. So you see iron being established to be Rome in Daniel 2, and then again, iron is being used to describe Rome in Daniel 7. Verse 7, it had large iron teeth. It crushed and devoured its victims and trampled underfoot whatever was left. It was different from all the former beasts, and it had 10 horns. That's pagan Rome, the fourth kingdom. Iron has always been used to describe Rome. So now we know for sure that Rome is going to be helping. It's not going to reign, but it's not going to overpower. As far as I can see, it's doing its bidding through the image of the Antichrist. It is facilitating, it's helping. And the fact that this is an American pope and America is going to fall, there's something about that we need to be looking for. Because what I can see is that Christian nationalists want a combination of church and state. This is what they're campaigning for. So it wouldn't be that difficult for Rome to have that kind of influence over America, especially with an American pope who knows America. But let's just leave that until God reveals what it is that he's doing there. The one thing, the fact that he's an American pope, that is something right there. I can tell you right now, that is something. It's not a coincidence, because never did anybody think that there was going to be an American pope. And the fact that it's happening as America is falling, that's something right there. And we need to be aware of that. So let's earmark it. But we know now that Rome will absolutely have something to do with facilitating the power of this Antichrist and helping it. And not only that, but attacking fortresses. So it's going to have something to do with persecution. Will it be enacting persecution itself? I don't know. What I see in Scripture in Revelation 13 is that the image of the Antichrist will cause all to be killed who will not receive its mark, who will not ingest its ideology, drink its Kool-Aid, and worship it. That's the call of the image of the Antichrist. And Rome is going to be helping it. Rome will be its breastplate. Do you know what your breastplate is? Righteousness. What is this breastplate? Rome, false god. By the way, we're going to read an article right now, and I want to mention to you, because it's very interesting how Rome all of a sudden stands up for justice and no oppression and, this and that. They're the first ones to oppress. And here you're going to see language about the Pope talking about anti-Semitism. Do you guys understand that Jews went into captivity to Rome first? They were the first anti-Semites. Hello? How do you later have a platform to talk about anti-Semitism? That's bizarre. That's like electing a pedophile to talk about protecting children. Not too far off, is it? This makes no sense. They're constantly talking about the oppressed and the marginalized. What have they done? They've gone in and colonized. They've gone in and capitalized on the oppressed and the marginalized, and then called it Christianizing. They take the weakest and least powerful people and throw them into orphanages and abuse them. They have taken children away from their own families. They had families in indigenous communities and forced them to stop speaking their own language. And they've abused them and ruined their lives. And now you're going to see this Pope talking about anti-Semitism? How? How is no one saying you guys were the first anti-Semites? You threw Jews, took them from their homes, stripped them of everything, put yellow bonnets on them and threw them into ghettos to humiliate them. How are you going to lecture us about anti-Semitism and redefine anti-Semitism to be those who will not drink the Kool-Aid? What? This is so bonkers bananas. Like, I can't even believe what all of this has come to. The blatant stupidity. And the whole world. I watched what happened. I watched when this Pope was elected. The entire world, every news station, so lovingly, so idolatrously, crying and weeping over a man. He's a man in a clown suit who is delusional and evil enough to accept the description of being the vicar of God on earth. The entire world was doing this, and he accepts it. Could you do that? Could you be like, yes, I'm the vicar of God on earth? Could you do that? That is a sick person. Jesus in the Word would call that a devil. It's disgusting. God's given us the two witnesses in his Word that Rome will be involved. Rome will help this Antichrist image. Why wouldn't it? It's taken down the Protestants that caused it grief. That's what it's going to be doing. It's going to be going after the very stupid people who've been worshiping it. And this is going to step in, because this is what Rome does, right? They step in to save the day and talk about all of these things and chastise everybody else for not taking care of the poor. How wealthy are they? How much money do they have to take care of the poor, guys? Why do they keep calling on you to do it? This is lunacy. To anyone who buys into that, it is utter lunacy. But God's brought it full circle. Babylon the Great. And this is the very thing that Reformed Judaism has prostituted itself to. They changed God's calendar to accommodate the Gregorian calendar so that it's a seasonal calendar, leading everybody astray because everyone's like, oh, Jews have been keeping track of this for years. That's not what the Bible says. Read Hosea 2:11. No, they've lost the calendar. God has holy days that are harvest specific, season specific, and then date specific. If you're actually observing them, then you realize that God's holy days that are date specific can't correlate to seasons. They prostituted themselves. Where'd they get Sunday and Saturday? You get that from the Romans. That's not in God's word. That's from the Romans. So, counterfeit Christianity, most of them observing Sunday Sabbath, and those claiming to practice Judaism, they're observing a Saturday Sabbath. They didn't get Saturday from God. You count down God's Sabbaths from the new moon. All right, we're going to start with an article that actually comes from Israel Hayom. This is a blatantly, obviously Jewish Zionist perspective. We're reading it to understand what they think and their relationship with Leo the 14th. We are not reading it because it's correct doctrinally. We're reading it to understand what are these people understanding about their relationship with Leo the 14th. What's their agenda? What are their plans? And you're going to see the arrogance in the way that this author talks. The title is Leo 14, A Possible Turning Point. So they're hopeful. The election of a new pope presents an opportunity to revise the Vatican's stance toward Israel and its military actions against its enemies. There are encouraging signs of a potential shift. Let's hope we won't be disappointed. Okay, so previous video, we talked about India. We talked about in Daniel 11 how it says, with only a few people he will rise to power. So we've got India, which we've already established, and now we have Rome. That's probably all they need. Israel would do well to send a senior official, either the prime minister or the president, to the inauguration of Pope Leo XIV. After Israel rightly chose not to dispatch its top leaders to the funeral of the previous pope, who had made harsh statements against it, its soldiers, and its right to defend itself while siding with its enemies, such a move would send a clear message from the Jewish state. We are open to diplomatic and interfaith dialogue, but on equal footing. And by equal footing, they mean on their terms. Quite frankly, I don't remember Francis, not that I'm at his defense, but I don't remember him saying anything harsh. I remember him saying things that were straightforward, like this is not right, and he has a right to say that. We all have a right to say that without being labeled as an anti-Semite or supposedly being harsh towards Israel. Just because you don't believe in what they're saying does not mean that you're an anti-Semite. There are and there are plenty of Jews, self-proclaimed Jews, saying the same things, being accused of being self-hating Jews. I mean, what is all of this insanity? Listen to this next statement. As the heirs to an ancient Hebrew civilization from which Christianity emerged, we will not present ourselves as paupers at the church's doorstep, ready to suffer humiliation just to maintain diplomatic ties. Listen to that arrogance and stupidity. Even Jesus said when he came here in John 8, I know that you're descended from Abraham, yet if you were Abraham's children, you would do what Abraham did. And he said, as it is, you're looking for a way to kill me. You're children of your father, the devil. Your desire is to do the things he desires. So if they don't adhere to God's law, how is it possible that God would acknowledge them as being heirs to anything? But they don't have the sense to understand, or at least the writer doesn't have the sense to understand what it means to be an heir. What is the criteria of being an heir? That is circumcision of the heart. Voices within the church are also beginning to speak of restoring relations with Israel, following the damage inflicted by Pope Francis. Boo-hoo, forever the victim. Rome's chief rabbi, Shemuel Desainy, surely I'm not saying that right, received a letter in which Leo XIV pledged to continue strengthening the church's dialogue with the Jewish people in the spirit of Nostra Aetate. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I don't care enough to look it up. But there is a Nostra Aetate declaration, and this is actually pretty important, it appears, so we want to understand what it is. Issued in 1965 in the aftermath of the Holocaust, the declaration altered the church's position on Jews. Interesting, because the first people to persecute Jews were Catholics. Did they also acknowledge that? Affirming that Jews had not lost their status as the chosen people. Good grief. It strongly condemns. So like you persecute them and then you're like, oh, but you're still the chosen people. You kill them and then you're like, oh, this is one of our saints. It strongly condemned all forms of anti-Semitism. Do you condemn yourselves then? And repudiated historical church accusations such as the Christ killers charge. Yeah, well, that was a pretty stupid one because the first Christians were Jews. And so there was a group of Jews, the leaders of the church, who were the Christ killers. Still are, that hasn't changed. And guess who they handed them over to? Rome! Oh, but never mind history, we're rewriting that today. It is important to understand that the Vatican has just as much interest in maintaining good relations with Israel as we do. There are encouraging signs. The new Pope, Robert Prevost, previously served as head of the Augustinian order. St. Augustine in the 4th century developed the concept of the just war. Stupid. God says don't murder. Oh, there's a just war and a holy war. Okay. Defining such wars as those waged to avenge wrongs. Yep, that's exactly what's going to happen during the Antichrist reign. They're setting it up. Do you hear what they're doing? They're setting this up to be justified. There's such a thing as a just war. There's such a thing as a holy war. So who decides that? Who decides it? Who went to war for the just cause of Jesus not being crucified? Who went to war for that? And this is what Jesus said to Pilate, didn't he? When Pilate was questioning him about being the king of the Jews and where's your kingdom? And Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world, otherwise my people would fight. Paul said this isn't a war of flesh and blood. It's a spiritual battle. Oh, but never mind that. We have different rules now. It's different. St. Augustine in the 4th century developed the concept of the just war, defining such wars as those waged to avenge wrongs, when a nation or state refuses to punish wrongdoers among its citizens or to return what was unjustly taken. Wonder who's doing that? The very people writing this article. They are unjustly taking Palestinian land. God himself drove them from that land. How are you going to claim that someone unjustly took your land when God is the one who raised Nebuchadnezzar, prophesied through Jeremiah for 23 years, that land was going to be taken from them? How are you going to go and say that something has been unjustly taken from you? Go take it up with God. Let's see what happens then. But you see, I read to you in the other video what Habakkuk says, what God said to Habakkuk. These people's own strength is their God. They don't believe in God. They believe in themselves and their own narratives. Even more so if that entity is itself committing those crimes. They're such hypocrites. Unbelievable that they can say these things and not realize the plank in their own eye. Augustine believed that defensive wars do not necessarily deter aggressors or prevent future attacks. Only punitive wars achieve that. Oh, I see, another justification. Okay, punitive wars. So not defensive wars, got to be a punitive war. You got to punish those you perceive to have done something unjust to you. Okay. This reminds me of German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock's statement last October when she declared that supporting Israel's right to self-defense, of course, means not just attacking terrorists, but eliminating them. Yep, definitely the language of God. Okay. I don't know. You guys reading the same Bible I'm reading? When the Israelites went into Canaan, like they took over the land right away. Wasn't a 70-year war. Wasn't like them sodomizing, raping, stealing. God just drove the Canaanites out. And he said, I'm giving you that land on account of the wickedness of those nations. So it wasn't like they went in and they were like, we're taking over your house. God did this. He did it through signs and wonders. They were afraid when the Israelites entered the land because they heard about God separating the waters of the Jordan for them to cross on dry land. Like they heard about these things. God is obviously not testifying to a 70-year war. And these people weren't sitting in like a court defending the atrocities that they're doing to prisoners of war. Do y'all remember in the Old Testament how God told you how you're to treat prisoners of war? Because if you don't, read it. This is sick. So this person has said that it doesn't just mean attacking terrorists, but eliminating them. That must be Israel's response whenever a politician voices support for our right to self-defense. We're not seeking permission to defend ourselves. We expect our allies to support Israel's right to eliminate its enemies. Let's not forget that on October 8th, before Israel had even entered the war, and while our brothers and sisters were being buried, the previous pope had already proclaimed twice during his sermon, war is a defeat. I realize there's one author here, but this is reflective of the mentality, of Israeli mentality, of what they've been raised to believe. And this is not the mentality, the ideology of the word. Yes, I understand that they have not accepted the New Testament, but they should know better from the Old Testament, if indeed they claim to be Jews. And you can see that there are Orthodox Jews who are coming out against this and saying, we don't even have a right to this. We don't have a right to call anything our land. These people don't have this on their foreheads. Why don't they have it on their foreheads? Why don't they believe? Why don't they think in the way of the word? Because the Torah is not in their hearts. So it doesn't come out of their deeds, it doesn't come out of their beliefs, and it doesn't come out of their thoughts. This is a different authority that they're speaking on. Now let's talk about Leo. In his first Mass, Leo XIV spoke about Jesus' conversion with his disciples in Matthew 16, noting that it took place in the beautiful town of Caesarea Philippi, nestled in a breathtaking landscape at the foot of Mount Hermon. Pretty sure the word doesn't even say that, by the way. None of that sounds familiar to me. He also remarked that for ordinary people, the man from Nazareth speaks truth like the great prophets of Israel's history. That's kind of weird, setting Jesus in reference to, oh, he's just like them. I mean, aren't we supposed to be like Jesus, not the other way around? That's a weird analogy to make. God is just like man, not man become like God. These are significant statements as the Pope acknowledged Jesus' connection to the land of Israel and the Jewish people. Unlike his predecessor, who was photographed next to a crib with a doll of Jesus wrapped in a keffiyeh, and never refuted the falsehood that Jesus was a Palestinian. As a reminder, following the Bar Kokhba revolt, 132 to 135 CE. Okay, you should already know that these are prostitutes. This is a prostitute writing this, if you haven't figured it out. What is CE? There's no CE in the Bible. That came from Rome. There, you can already see the prostitution. 100 years after Jesus' death, Emperor Hadrian ordered the removal of the name Judea from Roman records, replacing it with Palestina after the biblical Philistines as punishment. Who cares? Some of the Palestinians are descendants of Abraham. Some of the Palestinians are descended from Israel. Not that it matters. You're not being saved through your 23andMe. Last Sunday, during his sermon in St. Peter's Square, Leo XIV departed from his predecessor's routine condemnations of Israel and portrayals of the Palestinians as the sole victims. While he referred to the conflict in Europe as the suffering of the beloved Ukrainian people, when it came to Israel's war with Hamas, he simply said what is happening in the Gaza Strip. He did not side with Israel's enemies. Now, this is important. He did not side with Israel's enemies, but called for a ceasefire and humanitarian aid, as well as for the release of our hostages. Pretty sure he probably called for the release of all hostages, but okay. You hear what you want to hear. Crucially, he did not draw false equivalence between Israel and Palestine as his predecessor did. Okay, so pointing out a shift in, this could just be him being so-called politically correct, but he's definitely catering to a false narrative within the Antichrist kingdom. Specifically, listen to what I say. Specifically, he is catering to a narrative of worshiping the image of the Antichrist. That is the transition that he's making. If he's not calling out the evil of what they're doing, he is beginning to cater to them. Do you see that? And just as the writer of this article has been influenced by the indoctrination of the nation they've been raised in or living in, the same thing goes for those who were raised in the United States, which Leo XIV was raised in the United States in the false prophet. So he's got some of his own ideas inside of him, which is in part the rationale for why it took so long for there to be an American Pope. People did not want the ideology of America in their Pope. But now God is bringing things full circle, isn't he? And where there was a lot of separation before, you wouldn't have even had a Catholic president. For a long time, the United States was anti-Catholic. But there has been a rejoining of this Antichrist kingdom, and it'll split apart again. There had to be that reconciliation for a moment in order for this kingdom to rise. Let us hope this new direction continues. In many ways, it depends on us. Israel failed to consistently present the previous pope with materials documenting what was happening in Gaza. Whoa, that's kind of important. Why would you... what does the Pope have to do with anything? Why does he need materials documenting what's happening in Gaza if he doesn't have more power than we think? Babylon the Great, the mother of all prostitutes, the one who fornicates with the kings of the earth, the woman who's riding a beast, not the other way around, the woman, church, controlling government. Israel failed to consistently present the previous pope, consistently, not just present him, with the previous pope with materials documenting what was happening in Gaza, and did not protest his anti-Semitic remarks actively or forcefully. I don't remember, Francis saying anything anti-Semitic. Again, it's their definition. You don't worship us, you're an anti-Semite. In contrast, the Palestinian propaganda machine tirelessly spread lies that took their toll. With Leo XIV's election, the time has come to change that. Let's hope. I don't know about you, but just the way that this is written and the attitude and the language and the entitlements really get under my skin. But let's talk about what's going on here. There's a clear shift between what Francis was willing to do. Francis, at least, I'm not defending him, but at least he was willing to say certain things. He was willing to say that certain things were wrong, and then he was willing to condone other things and be a total coward and say things like, who am I to judge? Well, you're supposed to be leading, quote unquote, the church. What do you mean? What's your purpose then? Total coward. But at least he was willing to say certain things about what's going on in Gaza. This pope is not willing to do that, guys. He's using neutral diplomatic language, and you need to understand that what this harlot does consistently, and I've talked about it on this channel, is they will raise an issue and they won't take action on that issue. They will do it through their members. They'll do it through other people. So it's kind of like fighting a proxy war. Oh no, it's not me. And also, everyone following these popes, they kind of shift their mentality according to what the Pope is saying. So if it's packaged in a way that it looks like a lamb but speaks like a dragon, it's easy for them to influence the masses and manipulate them. So now in this moment, as America is separating, is withholding and withdrawing from having this active role of support with counterfeit Israel, India is increasing its support, and so is Rome. With only a few people, he will rise to power. Let's look at what Daniel says. An overwhelming army will be swept away before him, the image of the Antichrist. An overwhelming army, NATO, will be swept away before him. Both it and a prince of the covenant will be destroyed. Okay, prince of the covenant, America. After coming to an agreement with him, he will act deceitfully, and with only a few people he will rise to power. And then again, in verse 39, all the way down, he will attack the mightiest fortresses with the help of a foreign god, and will greatly honor those who acknowledge him. Now listen to what else is happening at this time. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings, or kingdoms is a better translation, who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. So from the point of John, in the vision, he's in the 6th kingdom. We know that because Revelation 17 says 5 have fallen, 1 is, and 1 is to come. So that means he's in the 6th kingdom. So at this point, the 10 horns had not been given authority yet, but they were given authority with the beast. So at the 6th kingdom, they don't have authority, and there's 1 kingdom to come. Who do you think they got authority with? The 10 horns, the 10 kings or 10 kingdoms are the 10 Germanic tribes that became Western Europe. They gained authority. They gained power with the 7th kingdom. And they had one purpose. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. So they have gained authority, power with the 7th kingdom. And they gained that power through NATO with the 7th kingdom. The United States holds NATO together. So when the United States falls, so does NATO. Has this happened? Has it happened that the 7th kingdom stayed for a little while and then in Revelation 13 created the Frankenstein of the image of the Antichrist, testified to the Antichrist? Has it happened in Daniel 10 that image of the Antichrist acts deceitfully, seizes the kingdom of counterfeit Christianity through intrigue, causes counterfeit Christianity to worship it, as is written in Revelation 13. Have these things happened yet? Well, then the timestamp that I've been presenting to you is real. Why don't I see any of you doing anything about that? What I've been presenting to you is proven. Why aren't you doing anything about it? You say you believe in the word. I'm showing you in the word. Why don't you do basic things like assemble, guys? Why aren't you on this channel sharing your testimony? Why aren't you asking me questions while I'm here for the next 5 months? Stop telling me about yourselves. I don't need to receive emails about your life story. I'm not here as your personal therapist. I'm here as a witness. I'm witnessing to you of what the times are, what God has told me, and what my testimony is, and you don't use me appropriately. If what I say is true, why have you not responded? Go discern these messages with God. I don't need to keep making lengthy videos for you guys when you don't discern these things. Go discern with him. You don't need to sit on YouTube listening to the things I say. You need to go return to God. Stop acting like this is an entertainment for you. That this is what God has provided you as entertainment. This is your form of worship. Because this ain't worship. I'm warning you. Go discern it with him.